So, hello everyone. Today we have a talk from Jeremy Bicha from Ubuntu. He'll talk about what's new in GNOME 42. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Today I'm going to be showing off a live demo of changes that have happened since the last Debian stable release, Debian 11, and that are now in Debian testing that will be available for next year's new Debian stable release. So I'm starting here with Debian 11, and the favorites bar is on the left-hand side. And I'm going to switch to testing. I have a bug, so I'm going to restart. This will take just a minute or so. In GNOME 42, the favorites bar has been moved to the bottom of the screen. And it also usually pops up by default when you first log in. Other features are in Debian 11, when you would have apps and they would have long names, you wouldn't be able to figure out what the name of it was. But now you can hover over the app name and be able to see the full name. So that's a bug that's been around in GNOME for like a decade. So it's wonderful that that's finally fixed. There's now improved 3-finger scrolling between workspaces and in the activities overview. So it's now more responsive and functional. I'm not able to demonstrate that specifically today. In the status bar at the top, there's a new Power Profiles feature. You can switch between 3 different power modes depending on your hardware, balanced, power saver, and performance. In this virtual machine, we don't have the performance one available, but at least these other 2 are always available. That's based on kernel support added by Mark Pearson from Lenovo, who has been here all week long. I don't think he's in this talk right now, but if you see him, you could thank him for that. At the same time that this was implemented in GNOME, KDE also implemented a similar feature, and it uses a service called Power Profiles daemon. There's also been significant performance improvements since the last Debian stable release. Some of that was contributed by my colleagues at Canonical, and then others from other companies, so that's been a true team effort there. Another new feature in GNOME 42 is improved screenshots. So if you just press the print screen button, there's a whole brand new overview. Let me open an app so that it can show a little bit more that way too. And open another app. Help app's good. So when I press the print screen button, I can choose between the standard selection screen and window. When I choose window, it gives me the normal GNOME shell interface to pick between windows. And then I can pick the window that I want to take the screenshot of and press the button. And it saves it automatically to my pictures folder and also to the clipboard, so I can just paste it in another app. Also included in the print screen dialog is the ability to easily screencast. This has been supported in GNOME for almost since the beginning of GNOME 3, but it was like a hidden feature. You wouldn't be able to know that it existed, but now it's very easy to get to. And it also supports a selection size, which you can increase the size, or the full screen view. In Debian 11, here's what the file browser looked like. Just showing a couple changes in here. And then here's the preferences dialog, for instance. So lots of preferences in there. Switching to Debian testing, the most visible change is that the icons are different. So there's been an icon refresh. A lot of icons are different, so they're now blue for this particular part instead of brown. Many changes, don't have time to go over them all today, but the preference dialog has been significantly simplified to make it easier to find what you need all on one page instead of having to flip between multiple tabs. Let's see. They also added a feature where you can run scripts directly. This was a tricky issue for GNOME design. They wanted to not make it too easy to run random scripts you download from the internet without understanding what you're doing. And so the compromise that was implemented is if you right-click, there's now a run as a program option for text files that have been marked as executable. Also, you can, when you set a photo as the background from the file app, so we just click Set as Wallpaper, it shows you a preview of what it's going to look like. This is using the XDG desktop portal support, and so it's kind of a prettier way of doing that. So that's a screenshot. I mean, that's a photo taken from here in Brisbane. There's also a new dark theme mode that's included by default for the first time. That was based on work contributed, first implemented by Elementary OS, which is a GNOME derivative. So it's nice to see different vendors working together on improving GNOME. In sharing, we have remote desktop support. Now uses the RDP protocol. From Microsoft, and that provides significantly improved performance. Also improves privacy compared to VNC. By that I mean your connection is encrypted, whereas in VNC it's not. So like if someone was in the middle, they could see what you're working on. So using RDP is a much better option. Related to that, there's a new app called Connections. It's not installed by default today in GNOME, but in Debian GNOME, but we may do that. This functionality was previously provided by the GNOME Boxes app. Boxes is actually what I'm using today to run virtual machines of the different versions of Debian. But they split it out to a separate app, which I think makes it a lot simpler to use and understand. There's been many other changes in the Settings app, but I don't have time to go over them today. One of the changes is that it was switched to GTK4, which improves the overall look and feel. On the topic of GTK4, there's a new text editor, GNOME text editor, and because this is like the last talk of the day, and I think we're all a little bit tired, I thought I'd include a little joke and demonstrate the text editor. Let me make this a little bit bigger. This wasn't available in the older gedit app. Here we go. So text editor works. So the new text editor doesn't have plugins, but it has a lot of features that you'd expect from a text editor already built in, like line numbers and many more. And then the show you the preferences dialog very briefly has even more settings than that. There is also a new terminal app that GNOME is recommending to be installed by default, but distros generally haven't switched to it yet. It has too many missing features compared to the existing GNOME terminal, but we're hoping that within the next release for GNOME 43 that it will have those additional features that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and install it. I don't think it's installed here yet. Oh, I did install it already. While I'm in here, this is the software app where you can install additional apps, and they've improved the look and feel in many, many different ways here. So go ahead and open the console app. So this is all of the preferences that you have, which is, well, there aren't any, so that's probably a bit too few. One of its nice features is that it will change the color scheme if you're using root. So just as an example, now the app shows up as red for root, and similarly, I can SSH. Well, I won't actually be able to connect to SSH. I don't have my password in here, my private key, but it'll change the interface to purple. So we haven't decided yet whether we're going to switch to this new one, but we're going to be looking at that in the next few months to give it some time for testing and feedback to see how well it works. The current version has a number of missing features, but we have merge proposals working on some of those already. GNOME Console was previously named King's Cross and was packaged as KGX. So if you're using an older Debian, that's what it may be available as. The calendar app now supports importing ICS files, so I can briefly demonstrate that for you using the DebConf schedule. Let's click Add and see if it works. And this is the schedule for DebConf included. One more feature I'll show you. The GNOME character apps for picking emoji has been significantly updated since the version in Debian stable. The previous version supported like Unicode 7, which was very out of date. It now supports Unicode 14, which is the current stable release. So there's many more emoji available, including the melting face is a Unicode 14 example. I actually updated this app here at DebConf so that it's using the 43 alpha, kind of pulling from the future, because a feature that was implemented includes composite emoji, which are very important. A lot of the emoji are a mixture of different Unicode symbols. So now you have all of the different country flags, you have skin tone modifiers, and you have gender modifiers too. So does anyone have any questions? I can take some now. Otherwise, I can give a few more comments while someone's thinking of questions then.
Do we have any questions? You can raise your hand. We have one.
Hello, it's actually a pretty basic question, but I was, trying Debian a few days ago, and I noticed when you type the password won't be shown. Is that correct? Like even with asterisk, it doesn't show.
Yes, in terminals, it's kind of a Linux convention. You'll see that in different desktop environments. It doesn't show the password as asterisk.
So I'll just have to know with my mind if I type it correctly.
I think the idea was that you're giving a little bit of information by telling how long the password is for someone looking over your shoulder. I believe there's an option to change that somewhere, but that's kind of just how it's being done in Linux. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add to that at least in the dialogues, you have a little icon at the end of the text entry to show or hide the password. Maybe a different question. Since you showed in Calendar importing the ICS file, does that is that a one-time thing where it fetches all the information once, or does that, I don't know, synchronize more often? I'm asking because Confi doesn't really handle it currently that well, and this would maybe also have been an alternative to use for conference schedule viewing.
I don't know. Sorry.
Two questions. Does any of this still require X Wayland, or is it running on Wayland exclusively? And the other is the console VTE based or something else?
Okay, I'll answer the second question first. Yes, GNOME console is still using the VTE library, and in fact, it's still using GTK3, in part because the VTE library has GTK4 support, but I think it's still somewhat experimental. With the other question, I'm forgetting the other question. Oh, yes, so I'm running this in a Wayland session. X libraries are still loaded. X Wayland is still there. There's some work from Red Hat engineers to enable you to run this without any X support, possibly like with GTK5. But it's not a high priority feature, I wouldn't think. But I think that maybe X Wayland now only runs if it's needed. So I think that has been improved there, but I don't remember the details on that.
More questions?
So with GNOME Free, one of the original apps there with GNOME Free, part of the whole style of GNOME Free was an app called GNOME Documents. It was sort of like the events document viewer for opening PDFs, but it arranged things differently. It wasn't a very popular app. It was just a bit stranger, and it's now been removed from Debian. You could keep using your normal PDF viewer. And of course, browsers now open PDFs very well also. There's a similar app, GNOME Boxes, that was forked from the code of GNOME Documents, and we may be removing that from Debian also, because it has also been abandoned by upstream. But there's an app already in Debian that can do that. Foliate is another GNOME-styled app that can open EPUB files. So this is Alice in Wonderland as an example here, and it has quite a few options. In the Characters app, this is showing a brand new feature. The About dialog has been redesigned. And so in GNOME 43, you're going to see more apps using it's just a rearrangement of how that looks. So it's kind of like a demo from the future. Yes?
I do have a question. When you logged in the GDM3, the first time you typed the password, it kind of came back to the GDM.
Yes.
It didn't log in. Is that a bug, a feature?
That is a bug. I'm not sure what caused that. Okay,
but do you know if there is any bug field? Because I faced some time I can feel out a bug in GDM.
No, I'm not aware of a bug filed for that. So I've seen it before too. Good catch on noticing that. It was a flicker of the screen for a moment, and entering the password didn't work. So the last comment I'll leave, because we're out of time, is, like I said, the next Debian stable will be released next year. We expect it to include GNOME 43. GNOME 43 is likely to start reaching unstable and testing next month in August.
Okay, so now thank you, Jeremy. Let's please give a warm ending for him.